Welcome to the Blueprint Podcast, where we throw out the old blueprint so you can become who you were always meant to be. I'm your host, Jason Smith, and if you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button and share this podcast with your friends on social media and tag me in it at JBirdFit. Today, I have a very special guest for you, Brianna Diorio. Brianna is a dynamic expert in integrative medicine, a clinical nutritionist, and a holistic life coach recognized for her vibrant approach to health and wellness. With a PhD in integrative medicine and a background in a NASM certified personal trainer, she brings a unique blend of scientific knowledge and practical wisdom to her work. Brianna is deeply passionate about educating and empowering individuals to take charge of their health through holistic and functional practices. Her approach is centered on understanding the interplay between mental, physical, and emotional health, which she communicates engagingly through her social media platforms and her podcast, Brianna Approved. Whether it's debunking health myths or providing nuanced perspectives on wellness, Brianna's content is both informative and transformative, encouraging her audience to live their healthiest lives. Brianna, welcome to the Blueprint Podcast. I don't have anything planned for you today other than to have a conversation about things and stuff. You create so much content on various topics and subjects and things that I think interest you, which I find intriguing because a lot of it's been relationship based, at least recently. That's been fun for me to watch as it pops up on my For You page on TikTok and Instagram to hear your thought process on dating and relationships and how we build and cultivate relationships and some of the challenges that maybe you faced or people that have been facing. And so that's why you're creating videos on that particular subject. We'll get started by you telling us who you are and who you help.
Yes, love that intro. It's funny, I feel like I have 2 different versions of my, I guess, social media presence. There's
Mhm.
TikTok Brianna, which is much more loosey-goosey, hot mess, and yeah, more relationship stuff, and then Instagram, where I built my platform and following. But for those of you who don't know me, Jason, thank you for having me on the podcast. We actually, I think, originally connected on TikTok, but my
Yep.
name is Brianna Diorio. I am a doctor of integrative medicine, so I have my PhD in integrative medicine as well as a clinical nutritionist, have my master's of science in nutrition, a holistic life coach through the Czech Institute, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. And then back in the day, I was a NASM certified personal trainer, cross one level cert, USA weightlifting. So basically, just always
Wow.
involved in health and wellness and lifelong lesson learner. So I'm a student of life, which is, I think, what gives me the credibility. I always say that lessons are what you get when you don't get what you want. And at the time, it didn't seem like I was getting the things that I want or didn't want. And through that, I've learned a lot of things. And I think, especially now with things like TikTok and Instagram, advice is a form of nostalgia. I always say that as well. And sometimes it's not just advice that you wish you would have heard younger, but I think it's also advice for a future version of you that maybe needs to hear something, or you hear something in the moment and you're like, this really resonated for me. And if this can help just one person have a light bulb moment, that's what really is my why of what keeps me going. So that's why I'm just on there, just shooting content and hoping it reaches the people that it needs to reach.
I think you're doing a fantastic job. Again, I stop on every single video and I listen because it's like nobody talks about this stuff, at least not in the way that you're doing it. So I find it really cool that you put all this stuff out there like that. So
Thank you.
tell us more about how you got started in all of this and what your progression looked like throughout the decades to
I
end up where you are now.
I love understanding people's history. I've talked about this a few times, so if people have heard this story, I apologize, but I did take a bit of an interesting, precarious route to getting where I am, which I think is how most of life happens. You know, you make plans and you hear God laughing kind of thing. I've really learned to love that quote as I've gotten older, but I actually originally went to school to be a Spanish teacher. So my undergrad is in Spanish education, actually just Spanish. I dropped the education part because at the time as well, congruently, I was a personal trainer at this place called Mike Duffy's Personal Training, who is the man who single-handedly changed my career trajectory. And I was like, this is so cool. People can make money wearing athletic clothes, and no one thinks I'm weird for eating hard boiled eggs and drinking water. And this was before athleisure wear was very cool. Everybody now doesn't wear jeans and only wears athleisure wear. So this was, I'm dating myself a bit, but I just always loved the science side of things. I was like, yeah, looking for books to read. And like I said, I was personal training at the time. So Mike Duffy had given me a couple of recommendations for Mercola and Hyman and all these people who were talking about functional medicine, Paul Chek, all these people who are, I think, some of the founding fathers, if you will. And I walked in my advisor's office the day before senior year. I just had student teaching in the spring, and I was like, so I don't want to be a teacher anymore. I want to go to graduate school. And she was like, Brianna, you have 1 semester. Just let's do it as a backup plan. And I was like, I'm not a backup plan kind of gal. Like, it just doesn't seem like what I want to do. So I ended up finding a graduate school. I went to the University of Bridgeport, which is based out of Bridgeport, Connecticut. And it was a naturopathic program, which I loved because I got to really learn a lot about the stuff that I was already very interested in: Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic principles, holistic alternative things. And then from there, it snowballed. At the time when I was in graduate school, believe it or not, I was on a talk radio show as a co host. It was called FTNS with my co host, Kelly Dubois. And that was like the original podcasting. And we would just nerd out about things. And for me, selfishly, I think one of the ways I always learned was by teaching others. And so, again, having teaching in my blood, thought I wanted to be a Spanish teacher. My mom was a history and geography teacher. My dad is really great. He was a lawyer and very good at taking very complex topics and making them understandable. So, I had gone on to open a CrossFit gym there in Connecticut. I started my private practice at the time, which I still have. I went and got my FDN certification, and it just snowballed from there. And then most recently, I finished my PhD. I think it was 2 years ago. I forgot. I think I blacked out for part of that at the end there. And
Right.
yeah, it's been a really cool evolution because I think I personally struggle with being very analytical and perspicacious and wanting to know the why and studying and all of that. And I love being a nerd and how heavy can my backpack be? That's always been my thing. But I've always loved mindset stuff and self-consciousness and evolution. My mom used to literally read me Wayne Dyer on Sunday nights instead of Mother Goose. Everybody else was getting that, and I was getting Wayne Dyer and these stories. And I've always just been really curious, asked a lot of questions my whole life. And so I think it's just been an evolution of trying to mesh those together. And the more and more I've worked with people, including myself, my own self healing journey, quote, whatever that means, I've just realized you can't really separate them. It just can't be as binary as people want. And so you really can't have one without the other. And again, I think for me, selfishly, the best way for me to learn is to teach others. And whether people want to hear it or not, when I get my face real close on the camera and I'm just spitting out some random knowledge, it seems to resonate. I think people like the realness. I think you do a good job of that too with your little walk-in chats. I think that's what really drew me to your page is you give real life practical advice and not just this very, I think, nebulous stuff of this is what you should be doing. This is your attachment style. And you're like, but let me tell you why. So I think connecting the
Yeah.
dots for people is what helps make it resonate. And like I said, I think that's why I originally loved your stuff so much. And you're doing an amazing job as well.
Thank you. A big part of that is I can't stand when people are presenting content and they're saying it in a way that you know that they're pulling people in based on pain points. It's one thing to identify and acknowledge and recognize certain pain points because it's important. That's how you know what you're going through and what you're experiencing and what the next step is. But what they do is they get into their upper register of their voice and they get really breathy with it. They try to make it seem much more scary and challenging. And oh my God, it's so tough. And you can't do anything without me. So pick me. It's
Like,
stop it.
yeah.
Just give the information, present the information, and do it in a way that's authentic to you. Use your own voice, show up as who you are as a person. And I promise you, anybody that's listening and you're the one that's doing this, sorry if I'm calling you out, but if you get into your own voice, your own body, and you start giving the information from that place, it's just people are going to be drawn to it. The right kind of people are going to be drawn to it because they're going to be the ones that want to learn and they want to grow, they want to develop, they want to expand instead of trying to pull them in with the pain points. I get it. It's a whole marketing ploy thing, pain point marketing, but I just don't see the long-term benefit in it in terms of the types of clients that you're going to get from that.
I
I
think
want
the
people
people that
that are
you
going to do the
ultimately
work.
yeah, I think the people that you ultimately wanna connect with, the idea of iron sharpens iron, if
Yeah.
you are that very pain point marketing person, you are attracting a very specific kind of client, and for me at least, that's generally not the person that I wanna work with. I think the people who, and I always joke, like I quote Tupac, real recognizes real. If people can see that you are empathetic and caring, but also no bullshit and to the point, people also appreciate that because
Yeah.
generally, at least for me, by the time they have found me, or are deciding to work with me, they've gone through so many other hoops and they're just tired and they just want help. And so when you can just go right directly to the point and be like, listen, I get it. I've been there. Or even if I haven't been there, I've read enough about it. I've researched it. And here are practical steps. That is what I think so many people forget is, and I joke about this with therapy all the time because finding a therapist is a lot like dating. You have to find somebody who jives with you and what kind of therapy you want. Do you want cognitive behavior therapy? Do you want somebody who's, and what does that, how does that make you feel? Or do
Right.
you want somebody who's, okay, and here's what you can do, and here are our practical takeaway, or what I call life homework. And maybe that's the nerd in me, but I'm always like, okay, but what can I do about it? And I'm sure you see this a lot too. We've gotten into this world now where everybody loves to label things, and I'm
Oh,
guilty of that too.
yeah.
However, that also gives people, I guess, some sense of, but it's not my fault. My parents messed me up. This relationship messed me up. I got fired from the job. And it's at some point, you have to take responsibility for how you participated or where you participated or what version of me was allowing that for as long as I did, instead of just externally blaming everybody else. Then it's okay, great. So your parents messed you up and you got fired and you have these attachment problems. Okay, but now what? What is the next step? And so I'm really big on the what is the next step takeaway. And I think you do a great job of that as well.
Yeah, the question becomes, at what point is it no longer their fault and it becomes your fault, right? You end up becoming a perpetrator of your own pain. You've gotten stuck in this pattern of belief, your core belief system that, yeah, it started out when you were younger, but then you grew, you developed, you changed, and you continued to be stuck in that type of pattern, that way of thinking, the words that you use with yourself and like how you describe yourself to other people. Maybe you're using self deprecating humor. And then you hit 30, 40, 50 years old and you're still angry at mom and dad.
Mm,
That's a problem. Everybody likes to say, "Oh, it is their fault and they need to do better and they should have known." They can only do as well as they could have in the moment. That's all they really had to give. And they didn't have access to YouTube and the internet. And therapy wasn't really that big of a thing back in the day. That's really
mhm,
something that's only been in the past like 24 years where everybody's like, "Oh, therapy, it's wonderful. It's great. Go do that."
yeah,
And it is wonderful and it is great, but it's not the be all end all. There's so many other things that you need to be doing as well, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and if you're not connecting with those things and filling your cup in all those different areas, you are going to continue to struggle and you're going to be stuck in that place of blame. And blame is so easy to get to because, again, it's your fault. It's your problem. You did this, all of it. And then you get to say, yeah, it's not my fault. I don't like the way I'm living my life currently. And it just is what it is. And it's
mm,
no, think about it this way. If you're 40 years old, how much more time do you have left on the planet? Potentially, you got a lot of time. And
mhm.
I know when everybody always says, you hit 40, it's all downhill. And it's no, it's not actually. Because that first 40 years, you were just trying to figure some stuff out.
Oh,
And now you've got enough information that all of a sudden you can just really grow exponentially in the other direction and create something for yourself that's going to be sustainable for the long term if you're willing to put in the effort and dive into personal development and self education.
absolutely. You said so many, I think, important things there. It is, it's mind blowing to me how much people would rather cling to an old narrative or a self limiting belief that actually doesn't serve them and say, or I should say, and not realize how powerful their words are. And it's something as simple as, oh, I'm just always late, or I'm just always clumsy, or whatever it is. And it's this idea of your words create your reality, and the thoughts create, I think your feelings and your thoughts create momentum for what action you're going to take in your life and the decisions you're going to make. And so people could just realize the power of the words that we not only say outwardly, but to ourselves. You have had the most conversations, I think, with yourself out of anybody else in your life. And you have to, what's going on between your two ears is the most important thing. So the way you talk to yourself, if you can't get that straight, work on that first and figure that out and really very specifically and intentionally choose words that are empowering and make small shifts, even some things to being like, I hate XYZ. It's a really negative, low energy word. And I don't mean that in a hippy dippy way. I mean that in you say hate, and what happens to your body? You start to clench up and your shoulders go up. And it just literally changes your quite literally your body language and your physiology. So
Yeah.
just small changes of saying, I'd prefer if XYZ. Just very it's so doing word audits, I think, is one of the easiest ways for people to get out of this kind of spiral of creating this narrative that again is just the devil. And people, I think it's maybe easier, or it's less activation energy, and it doesn't require that reflection of saying, oh, I've been a problem here, or I've participated. People never want to do that. And it takes people a long, or not that they never want to do that, but it takes people a very long time to finally get to that point to be like, you know what, I am also a problem here.
And some people never get there.
Yeah.
They go through their entire lives, and I can hear all the millennials screaming right now, going, "Yeah, my parents, they're 70 and they never changed." It's, yeah, that's the point that we were trying to drive home a little bit earlier. Can you love them as they are and recognize who they are as individuals and their emotional capacity? Maybe they don't have the same emotional capacity that you do. They're never going to have that. And it's not your job to fix and change people so that you can like, love, and appreciate them. Your
Mhm.
job is to figure out who you are, where you're going, what you're doing, and the why behind why you're doing it. When you do, you're going to feel much more capable, competent, and confident in
Mhm.
so many different areas of your life.
Capable, confident, and competent. I love that. I think so necessary for people to understand that competence and confidence, especially. But I think too, people get so caught up in this again, this idea of the blame game and what did they do? And it's, I always say this. I even did a post on it a few weeks ago. Change doesn't happen until you're tired of your own bullshit. That is quite literally the only point. I remember I had gone through breakups in the past, and after you workshop a bunch of different stories to people, hoping you'll get a different response, being like, you know, you're hoping one person is like, oh, it wasn't that bad. And you eventually, I remember saying out loud to my mom once, I was like, I can't even hear myself talk about this anymore. I was like, I'm done. And that was literally the turning point for me. So I think it's important that people get to a place where they can acknowledge, but that can only happen through being like, hey, it's me, I'm the problem. I think people eventually do get there, but I don't think they always admit it out loud.
Yeah. I want to make sure that people understand we're not diminishing any of your pain, challenges, or struggles that you may or may not be going through currently. We're just saying that, and because we've been through it, we know what it feels like. You get to this place where you're finally tired of having the same experiences over and over and over again. And you do recognize that, you know what? Yeah, I do play a role in this. And okay, if change is going to happen, then I guess I'm the one that has to change. Okay, great. How do I change? What's
Mhm,
that first step? What am I
mhm.
supposed to do?
Yeah.
So, what do you think the first step to change actually is?
I think a really important first step is stop blaming everybody else, because you can't control other people. You can't love somebody more to make them love you. You can't wish the conversation had gone another way. You can't guilt your way into a different result. So I think it's first realizing that control the controllables, which is ultimately pretty much yourself. And even with that, there are still going to be uncontrollable factors. I think a second part of that, and this comes a lot from the Stoic philosophy of be nearly impossible to offend, meaning that you don't have to take offense to every single thing that happens. This has been really seminal for me as far as trying to ingrain this into my life daily, because I think you get offended to the degree to which you think something is true. So if somebody says something and that's so inflammatory to me, it's because I chose to have an opinion about it and I chose to take that personally, even though I may or may not think that is true. And what that's doing is it's taking my power away and it's giving it to somebody else who, again, I can't control. So I think realize the control, ultimately, the onus falls on me. And then number two, I think it's this idea of doing an audit for your life. I have always talked about this idea of doing a thought audit, relationship audit, whatever is energy audit, whatever is going on in your life that you're not happy with or what you feel you're not getting in your life, and figure out where am I participating, where have I participated, and what are the things that I am looking to evolve and change. And that then again, I think allows you to break it down so it can be tangible to say, okay, I want to work on improving my mindset. Okay, what does that mean? I could potentially listen to a podcast. I could read one article a week, and actually really breaking it down into tangible things. And again, not making it so nebulous in the sense of, I just want to be happy. What does that mean? What does happiness look like for you? So, even creating your own dictionary of definitions of what does happiness look like? What does health look like? Success, because those definitions evolve and ebb and flow. And I think if you have some version of shooting at the target, as Jordan Peterson says, then you can at least start shooting and say, where do I need to make changes? So I think the audit part and then making actionable steps is a huge part of that beginning to get to where you want to go.
I think you're absolutely right. I've been in the middle of who was it? It was Rob Dial Jr., the mindset mentor. He suggested a book, and it's called Maximum Achievement by Brian Tracy.
Oh, I love Brian
And
Tracy. He's great.
yeah, so I've never been introduced to him before. I decided to get the book. I'm currently listening to it, but it's Think and Grow Rich on steroids.
Uh huh.
It's so good because you just get hit with all of these things right in the beginning of the book, and you're like, man, I already know this stuff. I've read all the books. You can see a lot of them behind me right now, but I've never seen it all in one place like that, where just like he's just going from line by line, and you're like, oh yeah, that's good. Oh yeah, that's good. Oh, I got to remember that.
Yeah.
And like the audits, like you were saying, he was saying you can go back in the past and look at your past experiences, and this is a great way to try to figure out what you currently value in your life right now, because our values are so important to us and we don't recognize how important they actually are. But you can go back to younger versions of yourself and the challenges that you experienced and the issues, and give yourself advice with the information that you have now. What would you tell 9-year-old you, 10-year-old you, 15-year-old, 20-year-old, 30-year-old version of you? What would you say to that person in that experience? And is it going to be helpful? Is it going to guide them? And then you begin to find out that, okay, yeah, this is what I would do differently. And so you can begin to release the shame and the conflict that you carry with you, that guilt of, I messed up. I didn't do this thing. I'm not perfect. Gosh darn it. Nobody is. So
Mhm.
we need to scratch that and get rid of that automatically. But I think it's important to be able to go back at your life and do that audit, do that evaluation, and then give yourself the tools or the skills that you've been missing. I think for a lot of people, that's probably the biggest issue is we're missing skills that were never given to us or that we never learned throughout the
Mhm.
course of our life, because you don't know what you don't know. One of the biggest things that you have to admit is, yeah, you know what? I actually don't know what I don't know. So what don't I know? Okay, now I got to figure this out. Now I got to dive into self education. Now I have to go back and learn all of these skills to make me a better partner, better at work, better coworker, and just better in different areas of your life.
Absolutely. There's such a difference between being smart and being wise. I've met a lot of really smart people, book smart, so many letters behind their name, so many degrees, it could be like a thermometer at this point. And then I've met people who their EQ is very low, and very simple things like, again, the idea of comprehension versus having a conversation and listening, or understanding how can I have tactical empathy, or how can I take responsibility, awareness, the act of listening, not just the art of listening, right? There's a difference between those things. So I think getting very in the weeds about some of those discrepancies is what does take somebody to the next level, which is what can make it harder, though, to connect with certain people on different levels as you evolve, because that is what is the catch 22 about this whole self evolution, self awareness trap sometimes, is that you finally start to be like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, I noticed I was operating from this operating system and attracting these kinds of people and relationships and friendships or whatever. And then you take responsibility, and then get away the people that were also participating. And then you start to feel like misunderstood or alone. And then you're like, do I have the tools? Do I have the books? And then once you get that, can become over. You feel like then there's too much information. And so I think it is important for people to realize, yes, I want to focus on these 10 things and improve all of these things. But number one, there's no end date, there's no finish line, there's no perfect score you're going to get like in school. And then also understand that at sometimes you can focus on one area and then shelf the others and come back. And it's, I think, figuring out this juggling act of what is it right now that's causing me the most pain that I want to try and focus on with the tools that I have in the place that I'm in? Because sometimes, even if you want to focus on something, it's actually not the right time. Like, that is also important for people to remember. If you're already, to your point, in this place of, okay, I'm discovering all this stuff and now I have all this shame and all this guilt, and you're already feeling bad about yourself. And then you want to be like, and how else was I the problem? That's not always helpful. So sometimes
Right.
it's also just about what I call the procurement phase. The idea of, I'm just trying to procure some information and then I'll plant those seeds later, but you can't be procuring and planting at the same time. So it's like procure, plant, bloom, rinse, repeat. And so I think if people can understand that too, can be helpful in that sort of self healing cycle.
You made such a good point with that. Oh man. So self-healing, right? It's one of those terms that's gotten super popular over the past several years. Again, it's not to take away from therapy, but it is to give you a little bit of that physical, mental, and emotional strength that you are capable of accomplishing some of the things that you want to tackle, right? So learning those skills that you can't rely on your therapist for everything. So some of these things you're going to have to do in the real world, and it's that tactical information to help you navigate some of the other difficulties in your life. So you dive into YouTube, you dive into all the books, and then you become obsessive over it. You get all this information and you take it all in and you start to embody it. And you do create that distance from other people. Of course, a lot of the advice out there is, yeah, if they're, it's like crabs in a bucket and you don't let people pull you down. You just got to get rid of them. You don't necessarily have to get rid of them, but you can limit your time with them if they're not in support of your highest good or where you're currently going, or in support of who you're becoming, because you are creating a little bit of distance between you and the people that you have come up in life with. That can be a hard time for people. And when you create that separation, there is a little bit of time where you're alone and you're isolated and it feels like you don't have any support because you haven't become the type of person that is going to gain access to that next level group of people. And these are things that I've gone through with the podcast, where it's like you start out small, you're trying to get people to come on the podcast. Nobody wants to come on. And you're like, come on, guys. And then finally, you start getting some of the bigger names. And that's thoroughly enjoyable to be able to have those types of conversations, much like the one that we're having today.
Yeah.
So it's cool to be able to see that growth, but you do ultimately end up gaining access to different types of people. It's not better or worse. It's just different because you're different.
Mhm.
You end up coming full circle in all of this with your personal development journey, where you're right back where you started with the people that you grew up with, and you find that you can love them as they are, and you didn't really need to have all that separation to begin with, but you had to grow internally your resilience to be able to deal with and navigate through some of their challenges and the experiences and the things that come up when you're around them. So really you're just developing your nervous system a little bit further, or better able to tolerate the difficult experiences with the people that you grew up with.
Absolutely. I forget his name. I think it's Mark Mason, or the guy who wrote The Subtle Art of Giving an F. And he says, life is a series of problems you just get better at solving.
Yeah.
People do really believe that this idea of the what if wonderland, what if I get this or when I get there kind of idea, I'll be happy, I'll have better friends, whatever it is. And you have to pick your hard. There's always going to be problems at any level of life that you go to. And again, back to that kind of that stoic philosophy of being nearly impossible to offend. Problems on some level are objective. And what's really interesting, what's been a huge mind shift for me is that nothing is inherently good or bad in the moment because you actually don't know what it's going to yield in the future. It's generally our opinion about said objective event that happened and our reaction. So if you can really just pause for a minute and be like, okay, let me just take a second here. What are my initial knee jerk emotions that are coming up? Again, based off of my older operating systems, my core operating systems. And then why am I having these opinions about it? Why am I labeling it as good or bad? Because again, you really don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you needed that job to end or that breakup to happen or whatever it is for you to then put a fire under your ass to make you have the connection to send the email to do the thing. You don't ever know. And so I think it's also really important in this whole quote self-healing space circle to really be like, all right, let me just be a little bit more hands off and not try and be so judgmental or opinionated about everything that's happening. And let me just let it happen first. If the glass is falling, just let the glass fall. Don't try and stop it halfway, is what I say. If something's falling apart, let it. And then see, all right, now what do I need to do? And I think adding a lot more of those intentional pauses, semicolons in your life is really helpful. So you don't have to always be so reactive, which again, for so many people, I think comes out of a survival space or again, a quote, unregulated nervous system. The nervous system, self healing, trauma, these are all things that have gotten like a bit sticky as far as people talking about it. And then everyone's an
Yeah.
expert now. And it's like, again, this scapegoat. And they all mean the same things. But again, let's not use it as to over rely on it, but as a piece of information like the weather is. If it's gray outside and cloudy, you say, oh, maybe I should pack an umbrella today. You don't totally derail your entire life because of it. So I think it's just information.
Yeah. And that happens a lot. You see it all over social media, the weaponization of therapy speak and just how we're using language in general. It's shifting, it's changing. And what if you did make it a little bit easier? What if you did start using language that is much simpler to describe what it is that you're going through? And people often tell me, they're like, "Oh, you're just being reductive." I'm like, "No, what you have to understand is there's certain things that you don't like.
Mm,
And you can just simply say, I don't like this. This doesn't feel good.
mm.
What am I going to do next? Because if I don't like this and this doesn't feel good, that means I have to make a decision. And I don't like making decisions because I'm indecisive and I'm an introvert. I'm all these things. And then we go through all the labels of what we are, and then we procrastinate, and then we don't make a decision at all. And then it just snowballs into this huge mess. Can you get to the place where you can say, you know what, I just don't like this and I need to make a different decision of where I'm going in life right now?
What's been the biggest self-limiting belief or label that you feel like was holding you back for a while that you didn't realize and that you have worked to be like, "Wow, I took that veil off and now I'm operating at a whole different altitude right now."
Why would you ask that?
I had to. It's an important question.
So everything for me stems from I'm not enough.
Mm,
I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable enough. I'm not intelligent enough. It's just, I'm not enough.
mhm.
You get to this place where I graduated high school. The college wasn't in the future for me. I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. And it just turns out I had some struggles in learning that today they probably would have given a fancy label and all that stuff. It took me till by the time I was 30, I went back to school, got a bachelor's degree. I got my master's degree from the University of Chicago. Education wasn't one of those things that was meant for me. I would
Mhm.
tell myself, I'm not smart enough, so I can't go to school. That's not something that's meant for me. I'm not capable of doing that. I'm never going to pass any of those classes. I'm never going to get a degree. That's ridiculous. But it took me to get to that place of, you know what? I'm tired of doing what I'm currently doing. I need to do something different. It's like we said earlier, I'm tired of my own bullshit. So you make a shift, you make a change, and you bet on yourself and you do something new. You dive into novelty. You do something that you've never done before. And that was to sign up for classes at a junior college. I started taking online classes, and that snowballed into my bachelor's degree and master's. And so I would say I'm not enough is probably the most common theme.
You hear celebrities talk about this all the time where they're like, "I wish I could just give you all the money and you could that it's not, gonna solve it." And everyone on the
Yeah.
other end is like, "Give me the money and I'll decide on my own." Like you hear the pithy side of it, but it is true because money solves money problems. It doesn't
Right.
always solve mental problems. Sure, you can hire the best therapist and go on an ayahuasca trip and have a shaman and do all the things. And again, money problems that maybe is a barrier for people, but it's the thoughts that you think when you lay your head down at night and you have to have the replay or what I call the director's cut of life. Everybody is watching the highlight reels and the trailer, and then everyone's, I'm not doing that. And I'm like, nobody's doing that. And when you get the director's cut and you actually hear, oh, yeah, that person was a real pain in the ass on set, or that person couldn't get their lines, you see how much of it is a mirage. And it's like, I think if people could have that sense too of again, that's why I'm so big on the words that you choose because it is one of
Yeah.
those things, believe it or not. I know people think it sounds difficult, but all you need is to do a word audit of the things. Just record yourself all day or send yourself voice memos or write down the sentences that you say the most that you think are barriers for you. And look at some of those adjectives and verbs and words that you're using a lot and look up synonyms that are positive and replace those. And you see how these positive words, and I don't mean positive again in this fluffy way, I mean it in the way that literally sends a different signal to physiological aspects of your body and changes the way that you stand up and the way that you project your voice and the way that you interact. And so I think something as small as changing your vocabulary. Tony Robbins, for better or worse, if people love him or hate him, he has a whole chapter in one of his books that talks about this idea of the words that you choose and swapping them out and how that leads to different body language and power positions. And it's a small change that people don't have to go and spend $10,000 on a retreat to go to Costa Rica to then come back again when you're not in that environment anymore to be like, oh, and now I have to go back to my life. So it's so much of
Right.
that too, of developing your own tools.
I agree. Some of it is also adding in things like currently, right now, in this moment. What you're doing is you're taking away the sting of whatever it is that you're telling yourself, whatever's going on, whatever you're feeling. I'm angry right now in this moment. It's
Yes.
not a permanent state of being. It's just a temporary moment,
Yeah.
and you need to zoom out for a second, use a pattern interrupt, clap your hands, yell, scream, whatever it is, but get yourself to stop for a second, pull back, zoom out, and evaluate the situation for what's actually happening right now. You can do a body scan and ask yourself, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What's going on? What's in my environment? Who am I with right now? Why do I feel aggravated? Why am I feeling this massive feeling of anxiety? Why is that taking over right now? And you start to dig into it a little bit and you're like, oh, I feel like I'm 10 years old and my dad's yelling at me or something along those lines. For a lot of people, that's a wake up call of holy cow, I didn't realize I'm still having these experiences at 20, 30, 40, 50. I've had people as old as 70
Mhm.
in my 21-day self-love challenge and they go through it and they're just like, I never thought about this my entire life. And
Yeah.
it's only been in this moment at 70 years old inside of the 21-day self-love challenge that I've had this epiphany about who I've been and who I still am trying to become. I
Yeah.
love when I hear that because it just lets people know that, you know what, you're only as stuck as you think that you are.
Mm,
You get to set yourself free from that self-imposed mental prison by
mm,
changing the language that you use with yourself. Like you said, those little things, if you can just switch that word out, it
mhm.
it eventually does help you along and put you in a better frame of mind.
Yeah. I spend probably 30% of my day looking up synonyms for words and then how to pronounce them because I'll mispronounce them. It's half joking, but
I've seen those videos. Those crack me up.
yeah,
The
I'm like, "I say this word."
precarious.
I'm like, when the FBI seizes my laptop one day, as if they would, they're gonna be real disappointed. It's gonna be a lot of things I don't know how to spell and pronounce, and they're gonna be like, "This girl's
Right.
on dictionary.com all day."
I notice you've used 2 of the words in this podcast today, so kudos to you for dropping those in here. I love that.
We keep the vernacular game strong.
What does happiness look like for you?
Ooh, that's a good one. Happiness, I think for me, it's about peacefulness. I think happiness is sometimes transactional and is ephemeral in the sense of I'll be happy when, or I'm happy in this moment and then it goes away. And people forget that all emotions, good or bad, are transient. So, peacefulness for me, and then I guess which leads to happiness, is truly this idea of just being able to be with myself, not distracted, and feeling like ten toes on the ground, being totally where I am and not wanting to be anywhere else without distractions. And that means like no background noise for me. That means this blissfully unaware kind of idea. And really just doing again, looking at the different buckets of my life. I think that there's financial happiness. I think there's relationship happiness. I think that there's intellectual happiness. So I think breaking it down and just really looking at those different areas and saying, how at peace do I feel in any of those? And understanding that I don't have to have 100% in all of those all the time, too. So I think just showing myself more grace and trying to be more peaceful in the sense of, okay, no matter what happens, I eventually will be okay, or I am okay, or what's happening in this moment is temporary. So I think that has been a really big mind shift for me for peacefulness slash happiness.
You nailed it.
Happiness. Happiness is a tough one though because there's a quote they say nobody hangs hard times on your walls, and it's true because everybody's doing these highlight reels again of these happy moments, and then you randomly will see like girls or guys crying on the internet, and I'm like, are you doing that for attention or is this helping people or what's going on here? So I think it's okay, but that's happiness isn't going to last either, and so I don't know, just replaying that idea for people that all emotions are transient. And so just enjoy whatever it is that you're feeling. If it's good, it's not going to last. And if it's bad, it's not going to last. And just riding whatever wave that is. And I think people would get back a lot of mental time if they could just embrace that a little bit more.
I agree. In that book by Brian Tracy, in the very beginning, it talks about success and what is the measurement of your success overall. He says it's your level of happiness. What have you created? What have you cultivated for yourself? What else did he say? It's available to you regardless of your circumstances. So it's learning to be happy with where you are. And
Mhm.
like you said earlier, we get to this place where we're like, oh, it's a destination. It's this place that I can be there later on. I'm not there now because I'm angry and I'm pissed off and I'm not happy. And, but it's finding joy in the small moments. It's that, you're with your dog and you're on a walk and, you take your earbuds out, put them in your pocket and just pay attention to everything that's going on around you. And you listen for the birds and the different animals and you feel the sun on your skin and the wind blowing through the air and you can smell Some of the buds on the trees around here, they're really fragrant, and you're just like, you take it all in, and it's just that's a joyful moment. And those things are transient, and you're not going to get a lot of those moments all the time,
Yeah.
but you have to be able to seek them out. You have to be a seeker of joy and
Yeah.
then allow it to wash over you when you see it, when you acknowledge it.
Yeah, people need to realize that wherever you go, there you are. I joke a lot with my friends where I'm like, "Yeah, you could be
I
crying on a
say that all the
yacht."
time.
Yeah, like, you could be crying on a yacht or crying on your couch if you're sad. Does it help to look at the Mediterranean Sea? Absolutely. There's a time and a place for positive distractions. Hang out with your friends, take a class, do things that are, again, outside of your comfort zone. But I think it's also important, to your point, to find joy in the mundane things, because most of life is mundane. You can't
Yeah.
be having just highs all the time of just always getting 1,000%, because then your dopamine receptors will just absolutely burn out. So that's, again, untenable. And it's the idea of being like, can I be happy on a Tuesday morning, going to a new coffee shop and stopping and being like, wow, this is the best cup of coffee I've had in a while. And just, again, those really small things. And I think until you can find peace in those moments, you can't have Disneyland moments all the time, or, again, the grand finale all the time. That is not how life is supposed to be lived, because then I think it takes away from when you're having a low point. That's important because it gives perspective of when I'm having this now, quote, high happy point, you cherish it that much more. So I think it's really important to have those paradoxes in general in life are so happy, are so important. So you need to have that.
Yeah, you have to learn to be able to create it. So this weekend, I put up all the umbrellas in the back, and I have furniture out back that I built. It was a labor of love, and it's massive. It's this huge couch, and went out and bought cushions for it for years. I don't use it. It just sits out there.
Mhm.
I'm finally like, you know what? I went and purchased the umbrellas. I got them put up, and I forced myself to sit out there and read a book and spend literally all day outside. I'm so glad that I did, because my dog's running around, it's chasing the ball and having a great time. And I'm just sitting there reading, and it was so relaxing. I don't know that we allow ourselves to actually put ourselves in that position to be in a place of relaxation, because we're so attached to our phones and technology and all this other stuff. But it's throw it in the house, forget about it, just sit and chill for a little bit. And it's in those quiet moments that you begin to hear your own story creeping up, and the core beliefs that you have, and the things that you're thinking and you're going through, and the challenges that you have. But it's also where you start to find the answers as well.
Oh, man, I love that you said that. First of all, I love quality alone time. It's something I cherish
Yes.
so much. It's so
Yeah.
important. But also, thinking doesn't always solve your problems. This took
No.
me a long time, especially, I'm sure you deal with a lot of this too. Very analytical. Again, the difference between being wise and being smart. Very smart, analytical book people. They're like, where's the PubMed research article for this and what pathway? And
Yeah.
and so you
You're
try
not
and
going to read it anyway, and you're probably not going to understand it. So stop asking for it. But
yeah, but sit there and
anyway,
you try and ask a billion questions, and you're just like, the answers come in when you're quiet and just shut up. And I don't mean that like literally, like just like the mental chatter. And sometimes you gotta just let your mind tire itself out. And then the answers come, to your point, when you're in your backyard chilling with your dog,
yeah.
looking up at the sky, and you're like, that's why people have the best thoughts in the shower, or like when they're
Mhm.
driving their car, because they're not having all these distractions. And they're like, oh my God, all of a sudden they have this light bulb moment.
Yeah, especially when you're in your car, at least it is for me. But you get into autopilot,
Mhm.
and there's a part of your brain that just seems to shut off, another part that turns on, and it seems to take over. And so I'm going to Aldi, and it's going to be 15 minutes. So I have 15 minutes, and it's like your brain just starts going in all these different directions. And it's, yeah, you do end up popping up with some sort of answer or new idea or new product if you're a content creator and you're trying to get something else out there for people to love and enjoy.
Yeah.
But that's usually when it pops up for me.
Yeah, no, same. I think te I think. Also, it's that idea of I think and I think, and I've thought myself into so many bad situations. When have I thought myself into something good? And people even forget about that idea. So
Yeah.
it truly is this idea of, you don't have to believe every thought that you think. Watching your thoughts, as Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about that, and also challenging your thoughts. Deal with your
Oh,
thoughts as it's like a frenemy. I've dealt with this with a lot of clients I've had who deal with anxiety, especially, and I say, think about somebody that you knew in high school that was like annoying, but they were like your friend. And I'm like, name that your thoughts that start to get out of control. And you'll just be like, there's Annabelle acting up again. All right, let's hear what she has to say. And you can challenge it. And I also make people do this idea of, I call it thought substantiation, where I say, okay, prove it to me. Give me three pieces of evidence that prove that this thought that you're thinking is actually a fact and
Right.
not a feeling. And so until you can actually find the evidence and support it, not a feeling, and not just because you had a random whim about it, but being like, no, this really is factual in this sense, or again, this idea of worrying well, that also, again, it's that idea of what we were talking about earlier of pattern interruption and interrupting your thoughts and just getting yourself out of your head to be like, all right, let me take a second here and take a step back.
Can we talk about relationships for a second?
Oh, yes, I love talking about relationships.
I know you do. So, of course, I hop on TikTok and I see that Bumble may integrate AI into dating. Have you seen this?
No, but God help
So,
us all.
no, I know. I made a video on it yesterday, and I can see partially the benefit to it. My chatbot's going to talk to your chatbot and see if we're compatible. That's awesome. You train it to be a particular way and answer a certain list of questions. So that's great. That's fine. It can probably help secure attachment people find anxious attachers can then also find securely attached people that they covet, love so much. I just want to find somebody securely attached.
Mhm.
And then I said the avoidant, unfortunately, is going to have to remain in everybody's DMs and on long distance relationships. And half joking there, but it's
Uh-huh.
true. So I'm curious your thoughts on integrating AI into the dating apps. Is that a good or a bad thing?
M my short answer, my gut feeling is that it's a bad thing. I also have a theory that if you actually have a personality, that dating apps are just not for you because there's so many nuanced things that are missed in dating apps. A sense of humor, intonation, how you put inflex on certain words, things like that. And I know they're doing more stuff like voice prompts and videos and all that. And I'm a big voice memo girly. Anybody who talks to me knows that I will send you a voice memo. It's just how I communicate. I think it leads back to what we were talking about. This idea of communication in general is becoming a lost art, and people
Yeah.
are getting really lazy with the way that we think. People don't even use words anymore. We've gone backwards. We're using hieroglyphics again, which are known as emojis
Emojis.
and
Yeah.
even memes. And I'm a meme queen, don't get me wrong. But sometimes we have to actually think and use our words and consciously choose our words and think for ourselves. And I worry that AI is going to take the bar that's already low, even though you're the person who's holding the bar. So again, that is ultimately on you. And maybe just it's going to just be, I think, another step for people to have to keep weeding through the people who really want to be there to be like, okay, is this your thought or is this like a robot's thought? Or so I'm sure there's benefits, of course, for streamlining processes, but I don't even know how well the algorithm works. I have theories on that too. It's a pay to play system. Obviously, I know there's a lot of guys and girls who talk about, especially I think it's with Hinge, where it's like they call it rose prison and all the good looking people are behind the roses and you have to pay for it and whatever else. So I don't know. I hope that I always joke and say they should invent a dating app that is like PowerPoint based, where you can make your own PowerPoint and be like, okay, slides 1 through 3 are my trauma, slides 4 through 5 is my family, your version of a director's cut, and it would be more interactive. But
That's
I
funny.
think, I don't know. I think I have my hesitations about AI in general. What do you think? How do you see it going?
I don't know. I think we're getting way too far away from where we need to be. Being a Gen Xer, we
Mhm.
had to communicate and we had to build relationships and we had to talk to people.
Yeah.
And if we didn't want to talk to you, we just took the phone off the hook
Mhm.
and then we didn't have to talk to you and it was great. But then you also didn't receive any other phone calls because your phone was off the hook. But
Yeah.
it forced you to look at relationships a little bit differently.
Mhm.
And now with technology, it's been great. It's allowed a lot of people to find each other through the apps. For a select group of people, it's been beneficial. But I think most people are looking for a sense of community. They're looking for people to be around and to be with and to communicate to and to express themselves. And I think the use of AI takes that away. You're already isolated and alone and you're struggling, and people don't have as many friends as they used to, or at least close friends, and they're not
Mhm.
having the types of conversations that we would have had even 15 years ago. I feel like people were much closer, and now everybody's spread out, and then we look at the highlight reel on social media, and then we compare ourselves, and then
Mhm.
you get frustrated with yourself and you pull away even more, and it's maybe we all just need to put our phones down for a little bit and I don't know, meet up and go for a ruck or a run or
Yeah.
something where we can actually be around each other.
I joke all the time and I say that younger generations don't know the adrenaline rush of going up to somebody that you had a crush on or playing the let's catch eyes game all night and who's going to come up to who first and like getting rejected, and that's okay. And, having somebody not want to give you your number or getting a fake number, or, this idea of, again, just having small conversations and having the initial spark and things like that. But to your point, I've met a lot of my serious boyfriends online because it is a way to, if I'm not where I go to Whole Foods like every day. Where am I going? I'm not going to the clubs. I'm not doing all the things. I work from home. I live by myself kind of thing. So it does connect people in a certain way. I think there just has to be a level of intentionality and consciously dating, which is very different than what I think most people are doing, which is they are lonely. They want some kind of connection, which connection is not the same as compatibility. Those are very different things. And so people will get that entry level connection, that quick dopamine hit. Do it. Okay. Does somebody think I'm hot because I've been dressed like a lagoon creature for 5 days? And they get that. And then they get bored of the conversation. It's a cycle. So again, I think it's also about having a really good weeding out system. And I think it's also about not being afraid to scare the people off in the beginning. People think they have to present a watered down version of themselves, or they can't say, "Hey, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want," because they think it's going to scare somebody off. And it's like, good, that just means you got the wrong person out of the way quicker, because dating is a numbers game. So get through the wrong people quicker to get to the right person sooner. So I think it's just more work. And I don't think AI is going to necessarily help that process, even though in theory people think it will.
Yeah, like you said, intention matters. We want to push ourselves into, again, conscious dating is really the path that you want to be taking. What does that mean to you, conscious dating?
Lewis Howes says it best. He says it's the idea of having your vision, values, and lifestyle align. And until number one, you can answer that for yourself. Okay, what are my vision, values, and lifestyles?
Right.
And what in those different buckets, what are my most important things, and how important it is that aligns with my partner? And then the second part of that is being very clear about, these are my needs and my standards. And I think, again, people are afraid to say that because they haven't had a connection in so long or whatever it is. So they think something is better than nothing. But I am a big believer in that nobody comes with an operating manual. You shouldn't assume that people know how to love you. There is some level of taking responsibility and saying, "Hey, this is what I prefer. This is what I'm used to. These are some of my non negotiables. These are some of my green flags that I look for, red flags, so on and so forth." Voice that and have discernment with that. And then if somebody still can't meet that, or that's not for them, that's totally okay. You're not my guy. I'm not your girl. But being very clear about what it is that you want, and again, what level of priority that is for you, I don't think you're ever gonna get 100% of what you want necessarily, because we as humans are not perfect, right? Like, I'm not perfect, the other person I'm eventually gonna meet is not perfect, but it's about being perfect for each other in the sense of, where can we complement each other? Do we have a core mission that we want to accomplish together? What kind of life do we wanna build together? It's analogous to having a plot of land. You could have a dream plot of land and think that you met this partner, right? And it's this idea of, we both have to show up to the work site, number one. So that's really important, right? Like, does this person, where their intentions, do they even want to build a house, or are they just shopping around for plots of land? And also saying, okay, I want farmhouse style and they want industrial chic. And you're just like, okay, at what point does this really matter? So picking your battles too, of, again, preferences versus priorities. So I think understanding all those different little nuances is how you can consciously date, which I know people think slows down the process, but I would argue the more clear and concise that you get, the quicker the process becomes, in the sense of, when you actually meet somebody, you either say, "This is way off base," or "This is actually very in line," or "I'm at about an 85%." So, like, where are the things that I'm willing to be a little bit more malleable on? So I think it ultimately speeds things up.
I talk about a shared mission and vision all the time. And you have to be, are you building anything? Where are we going? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? What is the whole purpose of this exercise of coming together in a relationship with one another? And what do the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years look like? And you're getting intentional about what it is that you're creating and co creating together. That word co creation, I think more people need to wrap their head around that. It's easy to get online and complain about all the things that aren't happening, but when you recognize, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like, I'm the common denominator in all my life's
Mhm.
problems. So if I'm not having the types of relationships that I want to have, then there's probably something that I need to do to level up in certain areas in order to be someone who can receive that type of relationship, because it's around you. It's
Yeah.
around you all the time. You just can't see it because of where you currently are.
Mhm.
You haven't developed the skills or the abilities to be in the type of relationship that you truly want to be in. And you think it's like an entitlement, right? Like I'm owed that. I should be having that type of relationship just because I exist. No, that's not how life works, unfortunately.
I emphatically believe that you only get what you don't want if you settle for what you don't want. So it
They
is.
always say, what if this is the best I can do? And then they stay in the relationship because they're afraid that this is as good as it's ever going to get.
Yeah. And I think that's when people have to play the positive what if game. What if I can have all the things that I like in this person that I'm cherry picking and they actually respect my boundaries and they actually have comprehension and they actually are an active listener and they actually have a healthy fight language and all these other things. And again, that's where preferences versus priorities is important. Do a girl wants somebody over 6 foot? Yeah, but is a 6 foot guy gonna, get up with your kid at 4 o'clock in the morning, right? Like, so it's choosing your battles too. And I think that's when people say, "Oh, you're being too picky." And I did a post about this. Anybody who actually has high standards for themselves is never going to bash anybody else who has high standards because the amount of work that you've done to get to a place of being so that is for you mentally stable, financially stable, emotionally, all of the things that make you at the best version of yourself. And I think what happens is people just get tired. And I get it. Like it can be disparaging, absolutely. But if you really believe that you're worthy of that and you understand again what it took for you to get there, then any other behavior besides that literally just becomes so uninteresting that you can't even be around that kind of energy. And I think people just haven't gotten to that level yet, or they get too tired and they're just like, all right, well, I'm at base camp and I just really I can't get up there yet. So they're like, this will do for now. And I always say better to marry late than marry wrong. And even if you marry right, you still might not get it right. So I at least want to know that I am in a place where it feels like the fullest fuck yes that I can be in a relationship place. Because good relationships are hard enough to work. Imagine going in on day one and being like, I don't know. And if it doesn't work, and like the best relationships are arguably still even difficult to manage as life throws more things at you. So imagine going in being not totally psyched and having a lot of gray and coming from a place of lack, scarcity mindset, and then thinking it's going to get better. Child, no. Baby girl, no.
I'm gonna have to drop a bomb uh, in the edit on this one because that was good. So, what are some of your green flags for dating?
Oh, I love green flags. Green people don't talk about this enough.
No, it's easy to focus on the negative and say, "No, all these are all the red flags. What are the green ones? What do they look like?"
Green flags for me, a huge one is having a kind and generous heart. And this is so important because my base system is I'm really kind and I'm really generous. So I don't know anything else. So that is like my natural default setting. And I'm sure you've seen this a lot. Givers don't know how to set limits and takers don't know how to set limits. So if you're with a person who just takes and you have very different definitions of what generosity looks like, somebody could, yeah, be spending a lot of money on you. That doesn't mean they're generous with their time. They're generous with their words. They're generous with their heart. There's a very different. So people think that, especially in the context of men, like provider mindset. You could be providing solutions. You could be providing a great family. You could be providing a social network they didn't have before, right? So it's not just about monetary things. And I think that's where people get mixed up in this idea of generous, kind of base set. So those are two really big things for me. I'm also a huge green flag, I think, is family values. I'm a very family oriented girl. My family is the most important thing. And listen, my family happens to be blood. For everybody, that's not the case. When I say family, the people who are literally in your circle and in your corner, because those are not always the same thing. So having someone who values relationships and the idea of what a family unit looks like for you. And then a big thing, I am very big into mindset. So somebody who is a lifelong learner. You don't have to have a PhD, but you have to be somebody who's curious and wants to have deep conversations and wants to ask why and wants to always be, I think, taking responsibility and aware of how can things evolve. How did I participate in any area, whether again that's financial literacy or intellectual compatibility and all of those things. So I think those are things that I really look for. And then obviously a huge pillar for me is health and wellness. I don't want somebody who's a total nut and a total fanatic where they're like, I can never go out to eat and I have to only cook at home because I love going out to eat and I love a good cocktail every now and again. But somebody who values health, mental health and physical health, and somebody who is like active and again is open and into that. So I think that's important for people to hear as well, is that you don't have to be dating the same version of you, but somebody who's at least open to the things that matter the most to you of sure, I could get into this or I could see where you're coming from or that's something that I'm interested in that I haven't heard about before. So those are some of my big green flags that and then there's my preferences. Would love if he could ski, would love if he was funny, would love but like the core green flags I think is what's most important. Anything in excess for too long, duration, exposure, all of those compounding factors matter. And I think it's about health averages. I will die on this hill. I've been talking about it for over a decade about the idea of any one thing isn't necessarily going to move the needle positively or negatively. It's about what are my cumulative averages of the things I'm putting into my body, the thoughts that I say to myself. That's a huge part of it too, right? Balancing our physical health and our mental health and our spiritual health, whatever that means for you. And I think understanding that it's about how does that average out for me at the end of the week or the end of the month and making sure that again when I'm juggling those balls, sometimes they're going to be wiffle balls and sometimes they're going to be glass balls and sometimes you have to be willing to drop a couple of those to have the whole health of your mind, body, spirit be in a good place where you can still enjoy life because I believe that life is meant to be lived and nobody's going to be on their deathbed being like, oh man, I shouldn't have eaten that cake in Italy with my brother, or I wish I would have done one more 45-minute workout session. And again, there's a time and a place for all those things. I'm not
Yeah.
health bullying anybody. And these tools for sometimes when they're in a state of desperation really does help keep them afloat. But when you get out of that haze, reassess how can I have some more balance in my life that I can actually maintain and sustain it and enjoy this version of the life that I'm living.
That's another drop a bomb. I'm gonna do that.
We like to drop knowledge bombs every now and again. We've gained some knowledge over the years.
So, how can people work with you or get a hold of you?
I have a couple of different avenues. So I would say first things first, follow me on Instagram, which is at Brianna Diorio. I'm also on TikTok, which again is where I talk a little bit more candidly and freely without not that I'm always edited on Instagram. I'll have the camera right up in my
Yeah, it's a
face.
little more curated on Instagram for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I also have a podcast called the Brianna Approved Podcast, which is great because and I hope you'll come on. I know we had talked about this a while ago if we were going to do a pod swap, so hopefully
Yeah.
now you'll come on my podcast. Where it's great. I have solo episodes, but I also have guests and experts from other areas and that's a really great source. And then my website briannadiorio.com is where you can see different services that I offer for actually working with me, whether that's a one-time session or a couple months together. So mostly briannadiorio.com is probably a good jumping off point because that will ping you out to all of my other resources.
And let's talk about a one-on-one session real quick and what that might actually look like, just so people can get a mental picture of what it's like to work with you.
Yes, all of my past clients, if they listen to this, are going to be cringing inside because my one on one process, actually, any process, everybody starts with a very thorough intake form process. And when they
Yeah.
get it, they probably feel overwhelmed. And I always warn them about that, but it's for a reason. There's a method behind my madness. So we go into everything from your adrenal health to your liver health to your sleeping patterns to what you're currently eating and all of that, your goals, family health history labs you've done, labs you think you want to do. Some people write me basically a thesis on what's been going on in their life and all of that. And we use all of that for our first session as a blueprint. And we talk about all the clinical correlations that I saw from my perspective. And what's really nice about it is, again, you don't know what you don't know. And awareness is always the first step. So I have so many people that during that intake process, they haven't even thought about some of these things in a real time. One of the questions I always ask on there is, when is the last time you felt your best? And people don't even know that. Sometimes they've been living in a state of unwellness for so long that they're like, I have to really think about that. And what was going on in my life right before things started to unravel for me. So people will say, when I was filling this out, I didn't even realize how stressed I am or how little time I take for myself, or I thought I was eating, but I'm not. And so a lot of it is discovery on their end where it's not like I'm not pushing it down their throat. Cause I think that's when we learn best when it's like on our terms. And then when we have light bulb moments on our own. And then so
Mhm.
the first session, we lay out all the things we're going to talk about. What I thought, we're going to prioritize things. Cause again, you might have 10 things you think you want to work on, but realistically, we're adding in like one thing at a time. And then anybody who works with me also knows I'm really big on prompts and what I call homework assignments. So during the week after our session, we say, okay, these are the 3 things we're going to work on this week. But Monday through Friday, I want you to read this article, and here's a journal prompt that you're going to do, and we're going to talk about it. You don't have to share it back with me, but these are things. And then throughout the week, it's also very hands on of here, I saw this thing, I want you to read it, or here's a TikTok, I want you to watch this, or here's a podcast. So it's very hands on. And I always joke and say I have the most educated clients because I think that when you understand the why and connect the dots for yourself, it's a lot better than just a protocol thrown at somebody who it doesn't resonate for them. And again, it's if it's this kind of setup that's not again really tenable for them and it doesn't work for their life, it's about meeting somebody where they are. So it's really, I think, individual in the sense of what's going on with you. I know you said you wanted to work on these things, but realistically, this is where you are in life. So let's crawl before we run.
And what are the top 3 most common problems that people come to you with?
It's funny because a lot of the times people think they're coming with a problem like weight
Right.
loss and low energy.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's they are stressed out and overworked. I deal with a lot of people who have mystery illnesses in the sense of they've seen 30 other practitioners and no one can help them. So usually like energy kind of stuff going on and they've had all these other symptoms pop up, which is generally like a stress kind of thing. And then I also deal with a lot of women with fertility hormone stuff as well. But it's so funny because the footnote, the subtext of all of that, so much of it is mindset stuff. So much of it is self limiting beliefs. And so much of it is the mental side of things. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I always joke as a nutritionist, I talk about nutrition 5% of the time with my clients. It's like literally the last thing we talk about because I think people you don't have to have a PhD to know, yeah, maybe I shouldn't crush pizza 5 days a week. So it's usually a
I
lot deeper
can't?
than that. Yeah, I know. You can, you absolutely can, but should we? Maybe not. If you're
Yeah.
in Italy, I was eating pizza every day and I came back 2 pounds later. So here we are.
It's definitely different when you make your own,
Oh yeah,
that's for
calories
sure.
don't. Calories don't. My brother and I always say that stomach rolls are temporary, but memories are forever. So make memories.
I agree. Yeah, and those are some of my biggest challenges is probably nutrition.
But again, life is meant to be lived. I'm from an Italian family. Food is such a big part of every culture.
Yeah.
And there's so many like light bulb moments I've had personally, just literally sitting around somebody's kitchen counter, eating food, hanging out, chatting, my dad cooking all day kind of thing. And so I think, again, it goes back to relationships. People think that romantic relationship is different than a food relationship, different than a friend. Like there's principles that are pretty much the same. There has to be some level of boundaries. You have to have your definition of what that looks like. You have to have some kind of standard. So relationship with food is usually no different. A lot of the times for people when I see they have dysfunctional relationships with food is that they usually have low self-worth
Yeah.
and it's this idea of wanting to control things outside of them and external validation. So it's like there's always a subtext of the bigger text. So I think it's always and again that goes back to like why I'm so big on vocabulary and vernacular because it's not always just about the words. It's about what is the meaning of this and what does this actually mean for me and what are the deeper layers here.
Well, Brianna, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing your expertise with the Blueprint audience. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for your time and for your very thoughtful questions. And I hope you will come and be a guest on my podcast.
I think we can manage that